What's up, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Lisa, Jill, Renee. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How is everybody doing tonight?
Hold on.
Pretty good.
Point in the video on.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Welcome, welcome,
There we
welcome.
go. Like very friendly.
Thank you for being patient. We have always in the world of artisanal foods, you have something fun happening. And tonight is no exception. Thank you for coming in and joining us. This is going to be such an amazing experience tonight. I'm really excited for the folks that we have on tonight and for getting the opportunity to talk to you all about one of our new favorite products that we're selling. I am your host, John Antonelli. We are waiting on the owner of Texas Iberico to pop out. We have to pop on in a few minutes. We have another special guest that joined us tonight just for this class. So Kevin will pop on in a little while. But we are absolutely thrilled. Those of you that don't have your cameras on, I would highly encourage you to turn on those cameras. Zoom has redefined what it means to be camera ready over this last 12 months, and we are all family now. It's a lot more fun when we get to see each other's smiles and be a part of each other's lives. Thank you, Beer Drinking Fool. Thanks, Mark, for putting it back on. This is great. Chris, hello. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. As I said, we're just a few moments away from the ode, our awesome Tim. I mean, he was in the middle of transit, so he'll be signing on any minute now. But what I do know for sure is that usually I talk for the first 10 minutes of behind the scenes anyway. And so I'm just really excited and grateful to be with y'all tonight. This is one of my favorite things to get to do over the course of an evening, getting to showcase a new producer to us, something that is really sort of revolutionary as it comes to the American charcuterie world. It's really exciting. I don't know if you all have your plates in front of you. I have all this deliciousness. I'm so excited to get to eat all these things. Sorry, Kevin, that you don't live close enough to get these goodies. But what we do in a class, oh yeah, Julie, I love it. You guys got one of the ship boxes, it looks like, and plated it. That's awesome. So exciting. Some of you are picked up cheese plates at our cheese house. Some of you got them shipped. I know a bunch of people are going to be watching this recording in the next couple of days. And so we are absolutely pumped for this kind of class. Texas Iberico has been on our radar for a few years, and we are thrilled to finally get to be working with them in this sort of form that they are in at this point. When Tim does get on, I will introduce y'all. But we have a lot of fun things to talk through and go through tonight, because when we do a behind the scenes tasting, this is all about getting to showcase really one producer, share some video content, kind of a reflection on who they are and what they aim to be and do. And so unfortunately, Kendall doesn't get to play and be a participant in this. She is babysitting the kids tonight in the other room, and I haven't heard them yell yet, but as you all know, sometimes they run in and sometimes they don't. My name is John Antonelli. I'm one of the co-owners of Antonelli's Cheese. We're an 11-year-old business here in Austin. Y'all are amazing people that have supported us through and through over the years. We do retail, we do wholesale throughout Central Texas, Dallas, Houston, and Fort Worth now. We do events regularly, both shipped and in person or local. And I'm sure we're all pretty excited to get back into the cheese shop and see customers face to face. But this is a pretty amazing way to interact with so many folks in a given time. So the way we do our tastings, our behind the scenes tastings, is that what we're going to do is get a chance to talk about the producer and talk about what their sort of passion, their backgrounds are. And then throughout the course of it, we're going to taste it. We're going to taste the products. On your plate tonight, we have 4 of their amazing, delicious things. And we're going to get an opportunity to do, a deep dive into each one, but really start at, the animals and the feed and the reason why they exist. But what I'd love to do is quickly introduce you to Kevin. Kevin's on. Kevin is one of the premier charcuterie producers in the United States and does incredible things with meat, which you are going to be tasting tonight as part of the Texas Iberico family. He owns his own business that is just assisting the Texas Iberico family at this point. But Kevin, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, because I really want to, I was going to ask you the first question anyway, which was, how do you approach tasting when you are approaching meat like this? What is your personal take on approaching meat?
So, first of all, John, thanks for having us on, and Spotted Trotter is thrilled to be with you guys. Thank you very much for having me. And then to rec back, tasting meat and you, John, can you kind of, with regard to a tasting as a function and how we kind of, or how I look at the kind of the understanding of putting a tasting together, to me, is to really look at 2 things, and that's really the texture, I think, and the aroma of what you're looking at. And then really when we go through, when I put a tasting together, you're going to look at a couple of things and how the flavors come together with regard to if it's going to complement the 2 things, or if it's going to contrast. And I think those 2 things kind of vehemently kind of tell the story as much as you can as you're putting something in your mouth, and those are the kind of things I look at when I'm putting a tasting together.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything that you particularly like when you're tasting really high quality meats, or say when you're doing batch tasting, making sure the quality is there? Is there any one thing you tell the team to keep an eye out for? Or
yeah, that's a great question. I think it's something that really has rung true. I wasn't graced with great looks or big muscles, but I'm working on that. And then what I think I did get as a young man was a great palate, and I try to hone in on that. And with regards to what we're doing when we're tasting through things is, one of the things that we focus on most is balance. Looking at the hierarchy of flavor is, you can have something that's too sweet or too salty, or the punishment of sour, or it gets too funky. So really, in my pedigree comes from as a chef. I worked out at the French Laundry, and one of the things that we looked at when we put things on the plate was how do we achieve balance in flavor? And you got all these different flavor profiles on your tongue, and you really want each one to be recognized. So if you got sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, you've got all these different wonderful characteristics in the meat, and you want all those things to come through. And so, we've tasted a lot of bad stuff through the years. We made a lot of misguided judgments, and certainly wasn't without trying to achieve balance in everything we do. So I'd say, John, the biggest thing is balance.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, and for those of you that are just joining one of our classes for the first time, Kevin nailed it. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. Your tongue handles 5 really distinctive things. And one of the things that we like to do is showcase for you all how the olfactory plays a role in the experience that you're about to have. And so we've been doing this since September of 2010 in every class. And so this is, for those of you that got in the 10 before, what's about to come. Yes, Anita's already doing it. I love it. This is an opportunity to not take pictures for Instagram, but what I want you to do is pick up one of these corn nuts that's on your plate here in the middle. And then what I want you to do is pinch your nose like this. Then start chewing on your corn nut and keep your nose pinched as long as you can. If you don't have a corn nut, you can use a mini toast for those that we shipped. Pinch your nose, keep it pinched, and chew on it. Pay attention to what's happening on that tongue. You might pick up that saltiness, maybe a hint of umami. And when you're like, oh, I know what this thing tastes like, release your nostril and exhale out through the back of your nose. This is called a retronasal action. Is going to incorporate, Lorraine, it looked like you did a good smile. I think I saw a happy smile there. when you do that, when you incorporate the olfactory, you get this whole nother level of taste experience. And so Kendall and I like to say that it's taste plus aroma equals flavor. And so what we like to encourage throughout the course of it, because some of the seasonings that Kevin uses on these meats is delicate and nuanced. And it's really in the nose that some of that stuff comes to life. And so definitely try exhaling out as you're eating tonight, drinking, whatever. I mean, you can try this with wine, whiskey, chocolates, anything that you eat that has nuanced flavors. Definitely try to exhale out, because what we're going to see from chefs, right, that use a lot of fragrant spices and those aromatics, what they're really trying to do is give you like a really full three-dimensional experience in your face, in your head. And it adds such incredible qualities to the overall taste experience, which I just always find is such a stunning outcome. And then also obviously touch everything. This meat that you'll be eating tonight is texturally stunning. It's a very special type of meat. We'll talk about why and what makes it so different. And then we'll obviously look at everything and see the marbling and the textures and stuff. And much of what Kevin can talk about is how it started and how it now ended up on your plate, which I think is a super fascinating part of this process. Everything else that's on your plate, if you came to pick up the peppers, the pickles, the apricots, this is to incorporate that sweet, sour, either the complementary experiences that Kevin referenced or the contrasting experiences. So play with your food tonight, be a big kid, have fun with it. And I've got my chat window open. So if at any point throughout the course of the evening, you guys have questions for us, please don't hesitate to ask. And we will happily answer anything that you have that we may or may not have the answer to. I am super excited to start eating and tasting. And so what I'll do is I'll quickly go through the taste what we have on the plate, so you know, and what it is, so that you can enjoy it while we're going. And that way you don't have to worry about it too much through the tasting. We have a little jar, a little bit of mustard here. This is tin mustard. It's made in New York and Brooklyn. And why I like this mustard, because it's not overly spicy. And so it's more of a smooth, I guess I would call it more of a Dusseldorf style mustard. It's not sweet, but it's got a smooth flavor with a nice, the mustard seeds are nice and big. So you get this nice pop every time you bite it. And it's super good. I didn't want to do anything piquant, spicy on this plate, because that's a whole different set of sensors on your tongue, and that those pain receptors interact with your taste buds and can really brutalize the way you experience the food overall. And then we have the Peppadew Peppers. So this is the second newest fruit on the planet. This was discovered in 1996 in South Africa. There's lightly pickled in a simple syrup and a brine. Super good. Cornichon pickles, classic little French pickles that my daughter finally started to like after 7 years of me trying to force her down her throat. We've got apricots and California mission figs. And then the corn nuts are from Spain. Friends at a Petamax make these for us. These are super delicious. They're perfect bar snacks. So why don't we dive in? It seems like what I do know is that we had the ranch is just started. The babies started coming earlier than expected. So farrowing has happened, which is really cool. And so the little suckling piglets are just showing up. And so it seems like there is an issue with them signing on, getting on to the call. So that I'm gonna show you what we have. That's why we collect videos for y'all. And having Kevin is really special, because Kevin is how the product turns into what we're enjoying tonight. But what we're going to be talking about are these pigs, these special, beautiful pigs. And as soon as Tim gets on, I will pass the mic to him, and he'll be able to answer any particular questions. But I've got about 30 minutes of video for us to enjoy. Even though what I know is that when you are working in a food business like this at a ranch, anything can happen. We were filming a commercial at one dairy recently, and during the filming we had to stop because one of the mamas was giving birth and wanted to make a lot more noise than the film crew was willing to have. So this is part of the life. And so when the piglets are being born, I've got a picture of it. It's pretty amazing. But these pigs are incredibly old. This is the Spanish gene pool for this type of pig is incredibly long and historic. So these go back, there are murals in caves for this type of pig. And what we know is that Spain has really controlled the genetics of this breed of pig since the beginning of time, essentially. And so when you go and you travel to Spain, you actually get to see the Iberico meat, the black-footed pigs hanging from the rafters in almost every single storefront that sells this type of meat. And there are stores that will just sell this type of meat, and they're rated on a red label, green label, and I think gold, a few different types of bands depending on the quality. And what they do is they will work with these specific producers, raisers around the countryside, and work specifically around oak trees that create that have acorns. And so this historic breed was never allowed to leave the United States until Ashley Martin, who is the farmer. I've got a little slideshow of Ashley and his family. I want to share my screen here, see if we can get it to play correctly. Here we go. And this is Ashley, and you can see the little. You can see my screen here. So this is Ashley. He is in the middle of helping some of the piglets be born right now, but he worked with folks in Spain to try to be the first place to ever export this genetics outside of Spain. And one of the reasons why this was such a possible thing is because in the Extremadura, in the center of Spain, you have very dry, arid climate, very rocky. When Kendall and I drove through there last year, and we were heading north from Cordoba, which is in the sort of south central, just south of Madrid by a few hours. You kind of cross over this landscape in a very dry environment. This is where manchego is made, where the sheep really thrive. And these pigs just love the landscape there. And there's a couple different things that happen in the raising of these animals, including, making sure that, that they're fed on acorns and things if they want to be that bellota, that really high quality. But this genetics thrives in this environment where they can go and graze. They can eat, lots of different types of forage. They're omnivorous animals, so they can eat lots of different insects, bugs, acorns, vegetation. When the cacti are blooming, they'll eat the cacti flowers, and do such a really good job of converting this lots of different thing into fat and muscle, which in this type of breed, what the genetics does is create much richer fat content. Kevin, do you want to talk about the fat content? I mean, you comparing a pig like this to, say, a Berkshire breed, which has a lot more muscle to it. Do you have any insight into, just to give folks understanding on that quite magnificent difference between?
Yeah. So I'll just go back a tiny bit, and when I was introduced to this product many years ago, it was brought to our attention that when the Spanish settled in the United States, they initially brought a certain amount here, and they were harbored on Outzs Island, which is a small island off the coast of Georgia. And these Outzs pigs, there was a gentleman that came in and tried to get the Georgia DNR, tried to allow them to harvest these animals. I don't know if he's still in business or not, but he gave it a run, and we had the opportunity to work with a little bit. And what I came to understand is that it is a very special breed. Not only that, but the melt point, which is the temperature at which the fat starts to melt, is a lot lower than, say, working with something like a Berkshire, or if you're dealing with an American raised pig, a land raised, your melt point is going to be much higher. So what does that mean exactly? Well, if you're producing or making anything that has to remain cold, it makes it a little bit more difficult to mix. It can have smearing qualities. But what it does when you cure it, it makes it for a very, very unctuous and very rich experience on the tongue. It absolutely gets in all the intermuscular area of the muscle. And so it just makes for a very, very rich, very illustrious type flavor profile that really you can't get from any other protein. So I would liken it to a lot like if you're eating Wagyu beef, and if you had the opportunity to make something with that, the fat, it really is what makes the animal shine. And I think that, the Iberico, because how they're raised and what the amount of fat that are on the animal, you're probably going to see 20% more fat on the Iberico pork than you would on an American land-raised type of animal, Duroc or something like that. So it certainly makes a difference. And when you're curing, it's like the best analogy that I can explain is when you take a stick of butter and you stick it in the refrigerator open, it generally will taste like everything in the refrigerator about after 3 days. So when you're working with an animal like this that has such dense and wonderful flavored fat, you really want to protect that, and you want to be able to utilize it to its best abilities. And so we try to make sure that we protect that when we're curing with it, and we try to make sure that we're getting the best flavor profile that we can by using the fat for the best that it can.
That's awesome. Yeah. And this is a great segue into tasting the Lomo, which has amazing, you can see it. It's just got an amazing fat content. And so with this, because of the melt point, I often tell folks to just take a little bit and rest it on your tongue and let your body temperature sort of melt the fat. Kevin, you want to talk about this for a second?
Yeah, so we make a couple of different iterations of Lomo at the facility, and one of the things that's so beautiful about that, if you see Jonathan pointing that out, is that it normally doesn't look like any Lomo that you may have seen, and that's because of the animal. It's because of the breed of the animal. It's got a very intense fat cap. And the other thing about it, you really start to understand the wildness of this animal and how unique it is, because, when you get into the genetics of steering down pigs in the United States or any kind of cattle, everything starts to look the same. Well, what's very unique and can be sometimes a bit challenging with working with the Iberian pig is that it generally is going to always be different shapes, sizes, and it's going to have that different fat, but generally going to be a little bit more fat than anything else that you have. And Lomo is a very delicate flavor profile. It should be sliced razor thin. And just like he said, you want it to melt on your tongue. Essentially, if you're eating a whole muscle, whether it be, it can be Iberico ham, it can be Brezola, anything that's made of a whole muscle, if it's made correctly, it should literally melt on your tongue. You should have to chew it maybe 2 or 3 times. But that's the beauty of those type of cuts.
Just stunning tonight. Do you want to talk about the seasoning on the Lomo?
So we did that one's done with a prickly pear cactus. So we were really intrigued, and I'll back up just a little bit. What we focus on at the Spotted Trotter is we looked long ago at how we can differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. And so, we looked at charcuterie. We're a 245-year-old country. Charcuterie has literally been made for 3,000 years. And so we thought, how can we really celebrate what's going on in the United States? And what are we doing here in our food culture that really isn't happening anywhere else in the world? Well, we're growing things and ingredients that, quite frankly, you can't get anywhere else in the world. So let's celebrate those things. And so we termed the phrase New American Charcuterie. And we came across really trying to cultivate our ingredients in the Southeast, and in the South, being in Texas. We worked a great deal with Tim trying to cultivate and understand the ingredient base, things like pecans, pekin pepper, prickly pear cactus. And we came up with this wonderful formula for the Lomo. We really wanted it to shine. We get the prickly pears, we make our own brine. One of the things of New American Charcuterie that we do is not just the flavors and the ingredients, but the techniques. So for a lot of the whole muscle, instead of packing it with dry salt and just letting the moisture extrapolate, we'll make these beautiful brines. It's got a lot of Spanish sherry in it, beautiful garlic, and we take those whole muscle and we let that brine ferment, and then we put the loins in there and we let them sit for up to 10 days. We take those out, we ferment them for the longest legal limit allowed by the USDA, which is 72 hours, and then we cure them for up to 8 weeks. So you really get that beautiful funk and fermentation on there, but that sweet balance from the prickly pear cactus. So it really is a unique flavor profile that you can't get anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and this is so good. This prickly pear Lomo has been one of my favorite bites. And Tim, I want to also thank you, Kevin. Also want to introduce Tim. Thank you for being able to make it tonight. I know that with everything that's going on, it's always sometimes difficult to make it, but Tim is one of the great owners of this company that Kevin mentioned, working closely with. Thanks for being here. And we just ate the Lomo, and we have a question. Julie asked, I thought that these pigs only ate acorns. So maybe Tim owns one of the largest Spanish food importers, including the Beyota hams, which are the acorn hams. Do you want to talk a little bit about what makes this project, Texas Iberico, so special for you?
Sure, thank you. And sorry I'm late. We've actually been, I'm here at a friend's house eating some Lomo, some Fuet, some of our jamon. So the acre, I think that's something that a lot of folks misunderstand. So the pigs eat acorns when the acorns fall, right? So acorns fall in the winter. And the way they time it is that is the last feast that a lot of these pigs, that the Beyota quality jamon, that the pigs that go to the Montanera, which is the time when the acorns are falling, they're gorging at the end of their lives. And the purpose of that is to provide tremendous fat infiltration so that you can cure the hams for up to 4 or 5 years, but they don't eat acorns all the time. And it was interesting. I was with Jose Andres a couple days ago, and it's pretty scandalous what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're taking this wonderful animal from Spain, and we are creating a product that is purely American, and they don't want to like it. And, it was really interesting. And Jose said, look, all the respect in the world, because we're doing the same thing that they do in Europe, which is saying it's all about the place. And the place where we are is in Texas. And in Texas, we have prickly pear cactus, we have mesquite beans, we've got agarita berries, and all of these things that are very distinctive to this terroir, right? And what we tried to do with our recipes with Kevin and with Broadbent was, well, more so I think with you, Kevin, is to say, look, why don't we try to honor what the pigs are eating and reflect that in the curing? So, for example, with the ham, when we went to Ronnie and Beth in Catawba, Kentucky at Broadbent, they've been doing the same recipe for 110 years. And rather than come in and say, well, I'd like you to change this, and we're going to try to mimic what they're doing in Spain or elsewhere, try to be humble and say, this is an incredible product. The animal's wonderful. Ashley's a tremendous rancher, but I want you to do it your way. I want a Kentucky country ham made from Iberico pork, raised in Texas. And we just had a really cool conversation. I'm here with a couple friends in Austin, and just talking about the pride of place that they have in Europe, where you can travel 60 miles and the cheese that you eat and the wine that you drink and the ham that you eat in Spain because they eat ham everywhere. It's special to that place. And if you try to order something from 60 miles away, they won't have it on the menu. And they will look down at you and say, well, why would you want to eat that? You're in Austin, you need to eat Austin food. Or you're in Pittsburgh, you need to eat Pittsburgh food. And I think, we're excited to be part of this. And I think Kevin and John too, like, let's celebrate what we have. Let's not try to copy, but honor perhaps the history. So I hopefully that gives a little bit of our, some insight into our animus. This project started as a passion project. My family started La Tienda 25 years ago, and we're the largest importers and sellers of Iberico pork. Several years ago, got a call from Ashley Martin, and he had been involved with a project that didn't go great. He had a bunch of Iberico pigs running around on his ranch in the hill country, and asked if we could help. And I think that was important for us to realize that we can be proud of who we are as Americans, and the Europeans can look down on us all they want, but it's time for us to kind of take our our place at the table and say, well, look, yeah, it is different. Our ham is salty and smoky, but you know what? We like it that way. And our Lomo has prickly pear juice brine, and it's weird. And I know that you don't approve, but what was cool about Jose is he gets it too. And a passion that we both share is bringing Spain to the US, bringing US to Spain. And one thing that we're doing here that I think is important, I love that picture. It's not just about the food. We're trying to help these ranchers bring the topsoil back and use this dehesa ecosystem that they've been using in Spain for 1,000 years, where the pigs are part of it. And then you bring in the cattle and, the sheep and the goats, and you're cycling them through. And one of the most exciting things is what Ashley found is, what he does is apportion the ranch, move the animals around. The animals come in, they clear out all of the invasive mesquite and the prickly pear. And when they're done, the grasslands are back. And when the grasslands are back, then the cattle can eat grass. And it's pretty exciting. And I wish Ashley were here, and he sends his regrets, but it's been raining for about 3 days straight here in Texas, and he said he's knee deep in mud and farrowing piglets. And actually, he told me he'd rather castrate piglets than be on a Zoom call talking about himself. But no, I think it's for us, it's the people, it's the land and the animals. These animals, you can see them. I can tell you, I've been to many ranches in Spain. I've never seen animals that are as well treated as they are here in Menard, Texas. So we're real happy to be working with Antonelli's and Kevin and Broadbent, and we're excited to bring a little bit of charcuterie culture to Texas, which is a big beef state. When we started, Ashley had been made fun of by his neighbors for 3 or 4 years because they have a big feral hog problem here. But and lastly, I think and I can talk about the subject for a long time because I'm very passionate about it. We're trying to create a model for some of these ranching families here in Texas where you don't have to lease 20, 30, 40,000 acres of land to run cattle on and barely make it. You can have 1,000 acres, and these pigs, you can make money for your family. And these neighbors that made fun of him 2 or 3 years ago, they're knocking on his door now, or at least calling him. He's about 13 miles off pavement. Airplanes do not fly over our ranch or his ranch. And these are about the most mellow pigs. And look, it's a business. These are not pets. But he's been impressed by how tough these pigs are. These pigs are different than any other pigs in the world. They're not related to the Asian pigs, landrace pigs, and they are perfectly suited for hot as hell summers. We had a pretty brutal freeze here in February, as you all know who are from Texas, and pigs did fine. We lost a few, but they're hardy. And one story I do like to tell is there are feral hogs running around Texas, and these big boars will run the perimeters of the fences, and they'll take those feral hogs out, and they really police. I don't know. they're not a problem. And I think the ranchers now, and to relate back to acorns. So what we do is when the acorns start to drop, we need to go to other ranches and release our pigs there for 2 or 3 months. And the pigs not only eat acorns, they clean up the pasture and bring back the grass. So we're excited. This is, I guess, about Ashley's been doing it for 4 years. We started in 2018. And, I think the message here, so that it's a circle of people and place and the animals and great food, is one that resonates. So.
And John, if I could speak on Tim's point, it's really amazing to think about, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we all had the term, sustainability, sustainable. It was all about being sustainable, whether you were farming cucumbers or pigs or chickens. Sustainability has now gone by the wayside. It's now regenerative farming. And when you look at the model of these animals growing on that land, bringing the grasslands back, allowing those cattle to come in. I read a New York Times food article today about how Epicurious was no longer going to do beef. And they're thinking about, we got to think about, as a food culture, number one, we're saving and really celebrating these animals, but also think, from a distinguished point, if we're able to put regenerative farming on the map in Texas in a way that really speaks to the full circle of making farming better, I can tell you that would be a really fantastic, road for us to be on. And so to have such a premier animal and to be able to do it that way would be tremendous.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I read that same article today. My parents-in-law are regenerative cattle ranchers, and so they've sequestered more carbon in their land than most any other companies. And the idea of regenerative is you not just want to leave the land the same way you found it. You want to leave the land way more improved than when you found it. And so it's amazing. It's a very small part of the agricultural system at this point, but companies like Shopify or Patagonia, or they're buying access to those carbon credits as offsets at ranches like my mother-in-law, perhaps at a ranch like this. Kevin, since you were just chatting, will you talk about the ham? I think we'll do the chorizo and the fouette afterwards, but you want to talk about the ham since we got you on?
So the ham is done by Broadbent, so I don't.
Okay, yeah, right. That's right.
We don't. I'm sure Tim would be
I can talk about it.
That's right. I got so excited.
No, I'll be happy to talk about it. So that is a 400-day cured ham. One thing also to note is that our animals live for 18 months, and the typical pig and raised industrially maybe lives for 3 or 4 months. Someone just asked, Kevin is with the Spotted Trotter out of Atlanta. So the ham, again, this is country ham. This is a heavily in it. We were just talking about that. The reason that country ham is so salty, I'm from Virginia, and we're actually working on a project now with Jamestown, the archaeologists there. We think the first Virginia ham was an Iberico ham. And the reason they're so salty is that where I live in Williamsburg and Jamestown, it's swampy and hot and humid. So you have to use a lot of salt, and they'll use some pepper, and then they'll use smoke. And it's about, as this one old ham curer told me when I was about 25, he said, it's all about keeping the flies off them, which I thought, again, terroir, climate. And rather than apologize, because I've had so many Spaniards just tell me that we don't know what we're doing. And it's like, I try to explain like how we got here, and we like it. We like a smoky, salty ham. And so Broadband is in Culatello, Kentucky, started on a farm, and they do some of the best ham, I think, in the country right now. It's different than Spanish ham. The salt content is probably 3 or 4 times as much. And, I do think that there is an opportunity, and this is something that turns me on, is there are some things that we can learn from Spain and Italy. And part of that is we don't need to eat a ton of salt. We do have other ways of curing meats now than they did in 1650 or whenever this started. So, but for the time being, This is a country ham, and this is from Kentucky, and it tastes like it. And it's funny. Kevin, Kevin and I, we've been talking about using celery juice as I guess a nitrate substitute, but we all know that chemically it's similar. But I went to Ronnie and Beth and I said, would you all be open to doing a nitrate-free ham? And they said, well, absolutely not. We've been using the same recipe for 110 years and we're not about to change it. So that's the ham story. We bring them from Texas. And this is part of the challenge of this project is if we could help bring some pork curing tradition to Texas, it sure help as far as logistics. But for now, we're trucking this meat to the hills of Kentucky and curing them and then take them to Virginia, and we debone them and slice them and send them around. So it's very different than Spanish ham. And part of, as well as one of the largest resellers of Spanish ham, I didn't want to be compared to Spain because frankly, there's no way we could compete. I mean, these folks have been doing it for millennia. So that's the ham story.
So now we're tasting this beautiful product. We got the video of the animals up there. You can see them grazing. How many of the pigs are there on the property over that 18-month period? I'm sure it ebbs and goes up and down throughout the course, but
it does. We have about 1,000 animals on 1,500 acres, and there are different stages in their life. Like I said, that they live for about 1.5 years before they're harvested. And it's interesting too. And I was talking to someone recently about, actually, John, I think we were talking about maybe the carrying capacity, maybe it wasn't, the carrying capacity of land out here as far as cattle. You have to have 15 to 20 acres, which makes it difficult to make 15, 20 acres per steer, just because, there's just not a lot of nutrition in the land. And these pigs are able to eat all these different things, clean up the pasture. And Ashley loves to say this, they will jump over an acorn to get at a mesquite bean. And I didn't know this before I started this project a couple of years ago, but mesquite beans are what the Native Americans here ate. That was their equivalent of cassava or yucca. They ground these highly nutritive beans down and made little cakes. And Spain doesn't have mesquite. And I love saying that too. So hopefully you all will taste the little difference. The complaint is, and I think it may be a little valid, and we'll get there, is that the smoke and the salt does hide a little bit of the flavor of the meat. But again, we're trying to honor what we're doing right now, and in the future, perhaps we'll try to do something that's a little more similar to what they're doing in Europe.
Are there any fences on the property, Tim, or is it like for rotation?
Absolutely. No. The whole 1,500 acres is fenced off. We're trying to keep the feral hogs out and these pigs in. They don't tend to wander. But also we have a lot of fencing because we're rotating them. So we're not depleting the land, and instead, and one thing that's interesting is their cloven hooves. That's what helps break things down in the soil and allows carbon capture, which I hadn't thought about either. So, but the pigs, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's replicating the buffalo, the movement of the buffalo.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. This was bison land.
Yeah.
And these pigs are helping. And I wish we had better pictures. We've got some cool ones. Someone asked, are we doing educational tours? Not quite. I think John and Kendall were talking about doing one soon. I think there's a little fear in ranching and in agriculture in general, especially when you're harvesting animals that are beautiful, wonderful, intelligent animals like pigs that, we're careful about who we bring out there because, we want to honor these animals and certainly honor this family that has put everything they have into it. So, it's pretty limited. We're going to, I think, do a bus tour out of Austin shortly. But yeah. I hope that helps answer a little bit of questions about the ham.
Yeah, so these are just beautiful animals, and that you can see this is how happy they are roaming and running, and it's really nice. They're probably on a very secluded part of the ranch, and only Ashley can find them any given day. I remember when we went to visit one of the farms in Spain, it was like, well, the pigs are just where the pigs are, and you might not see any, but you can see varying sizes, which is cool. But this is Menard is 2.5 hours directly west of here, more or less. Past Kerrville, past Fredericksburg, you keep going. It's so it's a long bus ride if and when we do it. We'll have to entertain ourselves pretty amazingly. All right.
Well, Cooper's is a great halfway point. So
yeah, eat some delicious barbecue halfway. It's awesome. Yeah. All right, and we talked about diet and stuff. I'd love to dive into some of the make process. And Kevin, thank you again for putting some video together for us. And you know, as you know, it was alluded to, but more specifically, so one of the main problems that Tim and Ashley have is they have these whole animals, right, that aren't typical of the more large scale food distribution chain where you can just send them to a company that will slaughter and then distribute through their marketing channels. So they have whole pigs, and you know, you don't want to be a sustainable business, don't want to just sell the back legs for prosciutto, and you don't want to just use the tenderloins for Lomo. You want to find ways to use all of the animal. So I know, Tim, you sell some of the fresh meat to Central Market currently, I think.
We do.
So you can get certain cuts of the meat that through food distribution channels like Central Market. If you ever wanted to try a side-by-side, I'm sure it's, you know, pork chops is one of those things, and but what Kevin does is tries to utilize as many parts probably as you can throughout the course of making charcuterie into something that has shelf life, that, you know, can withstand temperatures, variations, that can, you know, so this is, I'll show some video. Thank you for putting it together. But Kevin, if you want to just talk about what it's like, obviously you went to the school of life to learn all of these things, and you know, it's amazing what you can do.
Thank you. So, John, just to backpedal again, just a little bit, just to kind of update you guys. And my culinary career started long ago, about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Went to culinary school, worked at some fantastic restaurants in Atlanta, and then went to go work at the French Laundry. And then as I was there, I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and have to go into work. And then when I would leave, I'd pass the charcuterie called the Fatted Calf, and they're in Napa. Guy by the name of Taylor Bodeker owns Fatted Calf, and walked in one day and I said, I'm going to be here for a very short time. I said, I'd like to learn the craft. He said, I'll teach you everything I know. Just don't open a shop in Napa. Well, that's when a light bulb went off, because that was in 2009. And they had just started the farmers markets here in Atlanta. And we drove up the hills of Napa to go do a wine tasting at Robert Mondavi's brother's house. And we're cooking some whole pigs. And I asked him how he got started. And he said, the farmers markets. And I thought, oh my gosh. So we stopped for gas. I got out, you know, my flip phone, because that's what you had in 2009. And I called my wife and I said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to open a charcuterie. See how quiet it is right now? It's about how quiet it was on the phone. And she said, that's, what's that? And I was like, we're going to start curing salami and hams. And the Spotted Trotter was born. So I came back to Atlanta with the, you know, the first impression was to open a restaurant, but we were just on that honeymoon period of the, you know, fall of 2008. So we got started. I rented a tiny little kitchen in Decatur, Georgia. I was doing 1,000 pounds of meat in a 10 by 10 square foot kitchen for 8 months. Did that by myself. We hired our first employee on month 10. And we got started, and I had a lot of network connections through my chef buddies here in Atlanta. And one of the things that we really started to talk about, you know, when Tim was talking about curing, or how the animals are being raised in Texas and the humidity. When I was in California, I learned how to make salami in a very tepid, very cool, crisp climate in San Francisco. Well, not to be said in Atlanta. I mean, we're in, you know, you guys, if you know humidity, you know it in Texas. It's just about as bad or worse in Georgia. So I really had to understand, you know, the temperature, the humidity levels. We ruined quite a bit of meat. I remember my first sort of experience in hanging chorizo by myself was when my in-laws came to stay with me, and I was testing recipes, and we had set up some metro racks in my guest bedroom, and they came to stay with us for a weekend, and they're like, "What the hell is this? This is crazy. What are you doing?" And there was chorizos hanging in a metro rack in the guest bedroom, and so I really had to develop an understanding of how to control that environment the best. So we went in and dove deep, and really, it was pretty incredible because you dry out salami in a way that what most people don't realize, and they forget oftentimes when you're making a quality craft-driven food, the one element that no one ever thinks about. It's not salt, it's not sugar, it's not vinegar, it's not the simplicity of butter, it's time. And that's the most exciting ingredient that no one ever thinks about, because time is something you just can't mimic, you can't control, and you can't do anything about. And it's the one thing, it's the one ingredient in making quality craft products that can do the best thing for your product. And so we really started to understand the timing in Atlanta, and the humidity levels, the seasonality, controlling that environment. When we hang a salami in our cave, you probably get 3 times the mold you would if you did something in California or Colorado. And so we really had to develop a better understanding of how to wash the salamis, how to make sure that we were working with the bacteria in the best way that we could. So it was a like you said, it was a long ramp up, John, but we got it sorted, and we really started to understand and develop the science of making salami is all about having, you have to have a certain amount of sugar so that when the bacteria that you put in wakes up, it gets hungry, so it's got to eat. But most of that sugar is an inert, invaluable, tasteless, flavorless sugar. So that's where we got creative and really wanted to speak to, new American styles and values. And what's a sugar I thought that we could use? I'm a Georgia boy, born and raised in Atlanta. And there's a syrup that we use in Georgia that's called sorghum syrup, and it's absolutely amazing. So we developed a salami called black pepper sorghum. Well, when the bacteria woke up, it ate all the sweet, but left all that beautiful sour, that hominy, just delicious flavor from the syrup. And it's one of the most exquisite, just beautiful salamis that you'll ever put in your mouth. It's got that beautiful funk, but you get this just well-defined, balanced flavor of this sour. And so we really started to understand what we wanted to be in the marketplace and differentiate ourselves. And that was by utilizing unique, techniques and flavor profiles that just simply weren't used in the salami and charcuterie world.
How did you approach the chorizo for this?
So we really did a deep dive with Tim and looked at the balance of different flavors that were available in not available, but the things that were being grown in Texas. My knowledge of Texas is that it's a hot, very harsh environment when you're growing things, and those things, there are plants and fruits and vegetables and certain spices that love the heat. Things like Peking pepper. We tried to really understand the peppers.
I want to jump in.
So we looked around and after that we really tried to understand the mesquite and how to smoke properly, and we wanted to put a cold smoke on it. So we think about pecan is big in Texas. It's also very big in Georgia. So we tried to cultivate as many flavors that we could to really that would be harmonious with the other flavor profiles.
Tim, do you want to add anything?
No, I think what Kevin's done is, we started with Kevin, I guess, about 2 years ago, and right out of the gate, won the Good Food Award for that Lomo, and just kind of blew us away. So we see a lot of fun stuff that we're going to do going forward. And I shared this, I was with Jose Andres, who's a good friend, and like I was saying earlier to some friends, he really didn't want to like this at all. And he choked down a little bit of the Lomo and the ham, and he complained about being salty. But that fouette with the pecans in it, he said he could serve that in any restaurant across the country, and people would think it was from Spain. And hats off to you, Kevin.
So,
but
y'all can taste the fouette. Is there anything special else you want to talk about, Kevin, on the fouette? This is the sliced salami that's at the bias.
So we started working with pecans, and pecans are one of my favorite nuts. I mean, the butteriness, the richness of them. They had that just just well-rounded sweetness to them. And you think about the meat, just to eat that pork straight. I mean, that Iberian pork, it's got a very buttery, nutty richness to it that you just don't find in any pork around. And to pair those together was just simply, it was just a match. And we nailed it. And I'm super excited because, you know, the other beneficial thing about using a high fat nut like that is that it takes a little bit longer when you're curing them out because of the low melt point of that fat from the Iberian animal, and then the deliciousness of that fat from the oil and the pecan, because it is ground. We grind it to a powder and then we put it in. And so we're also playing and you know, paying a lot of homage to the French. There's a noisette, which is a hazelnut salami that's been made for, you know, probably 600, 700 years. And I thought, well, if we're putting nuts in salami, let's use these pecans and see what we can do. So I think it came out very well. It was delicious, and it is delicious.
And I'm chewing it. Try the fouette with the mustard. I just think it's a great pairing with almost the sweetness of the mustard that comes through.
Hey, Jackie, and you asked what fouette means. It means whip. So
Yeah, so it's a long
stick. So they typically are longer.
Well, I was going to say, as far as pairing, we had some, I would go with a drier red with all of these products. You need something that's going to cut through the fat. The Iberico fat has, I think it's 60% monounsaturated fat. It's very healthy, but it definitely, you know, it'll coat your mouth. And sherry is actually wonderful, and not cream sherry, but a nice dry sherry. So we had a nice dry red, and it was wonderful with all of it, the Lomo and the ham. So hope that helps.
You know, I like with the deep umami quality of this bite of food, I like to play with the sweetness of that apricot. It was a really, you know, we put them next to each other on the plate. It's a really fun, you know, add some of the sweetness that comes through in there. And it's a really fun tasting. In the background, I'm going to play video of the Spotted Trotter team making some of these products, so you can see some of the goodness and how it happens. Of course, ask any question that you want, but while we're watching, so Kevin, this is this the copa being salted?
Yeah, that's the first step. And really initially what you're trying to do is, for those of you that know about curing, even, you know, when you talk about John being this since the start of time, a lot of people get caught up in the romantic part of it. But what we initially have to remember is that preservation was the original reason why we started charcuterie. It wasn't because we wanted to make these beautiful meats. It was simply because it's about to be winter and we need to have meat for the cold winter. We need to dig in. We need to put this stuff on salt. And so we think about, you know, people that get involved in making meats and charcuterie oftentimes lose the focus of the science of it. And the reason why we put salted so heavily is to get the moisture out, right? So you guys know the adage of taking a cell phone and putting it in rice. You're trying to pull the salt out, or pulling the water out, excuse me. And so the idea that we're doing this initial first rub is to get the salt on as much of the coverage of that meat as we possibly can. And also it's really interesting because there's barely any moisture in the fat. So it's all in the protein. So all that muscle mass, the red part, is really what we're after. So we're trying to, that'll stay on salt for 2 days. And that will almost be 2 or 3 inches of water in the bottom of that, in the pan that it's sitting in. And then we take it and wash it. And then we will put spices on it, and then it gets fermented, and then it will get cured.
Awesome.
So here's the, this is the honey with the pecan, and that's getting rubbed after it's been salted and washed. Just develop this beautiful crust on it. Fantastic. And then similar to what, you know, I don't know if you guys know a lot about when you're hanging a salami, we'll put what's known as a starter culture on the outside. And that is essentially the white mold that you see, the Lactobacillus mold. And what that does is essentially slows the water from evaporating too quickly, because what then can happen is you get what's known as case hardening. The outside of the salami or the outside of the meat will dry faster than the inside. So what we do is we put these elements on the outside that prevent the water from escaping too quickly. It sort of slows the process down and enables the meat to dry at a slower rate.
So those were Copa, and this is Lomo, and just take a look at the size of that tenderloin. That's just a crazy beautiful piece of meat right there. And this is so do you do the Copa and the Lomo slightly differently?
Yeah, so the fat cap on those Lomos is fantastic. And when we initially started, there were some naysayers that had some challenges and issues with it. But I think if you've put it in your mouth and taste it, you realize that this is really something very special. You know, with the cure, we implement the lion's share of the flavor is coming in from the brine. And then we finish it with this beautiful Spanish pimenton. It's one of the, you know, signature flavors and spices from Spain. And we get it direct from La Tienda. It's just an outstanding smoky. You know, we worked with trying to do a sweet or a picante, and we realized that, you know, it really is good to have a sort of middle of the road, nothing too hot and nothing too sweet. So that's where we were at with that. These are the fillettes curing.
Look at that beautiful mold. I just want to point out, you mentioned 3 times more mold than somebody saying Napa. This is just a gorgeous site. You want to talk about this mold in particular, or the combination of molds that you have?
Yes. So the Lactobacillus Mold. So we just bought our own building and we moved in 2 years ago in November. And one of the challenges we were concerned with is, you know, we've got probably about 6,000 pounds of meat that we needed to move over to get this cave inoculated. But when we got there, it took very little time for that mold to start to bloom, when in fact we were in for about 5 months and we got so much mold that we had to stop. Essentially, we were dipping the salami, and we moved from dipping into just taking we have a large sprayer, and we just spray them down very gently, because the bloom would get so big and fluffy. It was literally like you could pick it up and it was like a stuffed animal. So we had to pull some of that back. But now there's so much bloom in that room that we're in a very good space. And the good thing about having that much bloom is that if bad bacteria does start to grow and harbor, if you've ever sort of watched from the scientific method of it, that Lactobacillus mold will essentially take over any bad bacteria that's going and coming in there.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. And this is just a quick shot of, this is that Broadbent, the other facility, just the hanging legs, aging here. And then Kevin, there was a question, Julia had a question on, is there a particular type of salt that you have a preference for when it comes?
So we use a Mediterranean sea salt. We buy it by the pallet. It's a little bit finer than what you would say for Red Diamond kosher salt. Typically the finer the grind. If you go too small, then it can, and you know, it's getting into too many cracks and crevices and can oftentimes, you know, get you a little bit too salty. You know, there are several methods and several type of, I guess, directions you could go with it. And the salt we use is for Mediterranean. That's
awesome. And everything tasted amazing tonight. So we didn't get a chance to taste Copa. But Kevin or Tim, is there something on the horizon that y'all are working on? Is there any new flavor that you have in the back of your mind?
Is Tim still with us?
I think he must have lost internet. He popped off.
So without giving too much away, I think we're looking at doing hams. Broadbent, due in part to us trying to get some stuff that you know, they love to do it the way they do it. And I cherish and honor that. But, you know, for us to really take a bite out of what we're doing and really celebrate what we're, you know, this animal. And if we're going to, you know, steer in the direction of new American charcuterie, we need to make a ham that we can say is ours. And I think, you know, Tim's on board. We're going to probably, and in all fairness, John, like we got to look at, we've grown, you know, as humankind, we look at, it's not fun to take and slice meat off of a bone, right? So we all know that the bone adds a certain amount of developmental flavor, but there's also a style of ham that's been done in Italy for probably 2,000 years. It's called a Culatello and a Fiocco ham. Well, not only is it really good and it cures in about 24 months, but it also is a heck of a lot easier to clean. So restaurants get it better. We can slice it easier. It cures much faster. So if you're without a bone and you're curing it in the fiocco, it's sort of the psoas major, the small like calf muscle. So we're talking about doing a Spanish sort of American derivative of that, and we'll call it a Texas Iberico, and we'll knock it out of the park. But we're super excited. We're going to start experimenting with that. I hope that was free to talk about. But if Tim asked any of you guys, you just say, I don't know what he was talking about.
We don't know what Kevin was talking about. No big deal. No, that's awesome. And Culatello, I call it the heart of the prosciutto. I mean, it's like special. It's a really great cut of meat. So I put in the chat window, like, is there anybody have a particular favorite flavor profile and favorite combination for tonight? And I also have one more quick video to show. This is right now a lot of the meat is in retail packs, and you can buy them at our store or at Central Market. This is the slicing machine. It's you can see it's an automated machine that will slice and pack everything. So this is state of the art kind of stuff, and not done by hand. So we'll see. I haven't gotten to watch this video yet, so you'll get to see it start running here. And it's just amazing 2-3 years in what this business has been able to do, partnering with somebody like Kevin, creating these amazing flavor profiles. But you can see how the machine will slice to weight, so that it can be portioned for the retail packs and then go into these into the cryovac. It's pretty gorgeous and delicious. And so if you do buy these, one of the recommendations I have is to about 20 minutes before you're going to plate, just throw it into a freezer for a few minutes, and it'll make separating the fat much easier, and it won't impact the overall flavor profile. Don't leave it in there for very long, but anyway, Kevin, you're amazing. To everybody, thank you so much for being on here. Did anybody have one last question before we dive in, before we finish up? This was awesome. I love getting to be a part of Texas Iberico and getting to distribute for y'all, and I love the story. So does anybody have any question, or can we do we want to just send Kevin off with a great hurrah? I think I'm seeing cheers here. I'm going to take everybody off mute so you guys can just unmute yourself and let's all cheer for him, because this was amazing. So
well done.
Excellent. Thank you. And if you guys are ever in Atlanta, please make sure to stop by. We're right on a main thoroughfare. We're about 18 minutes from the airport. If you let them know you were on this call, we'll give you 20% off on anything we have. Okay. We have a beautiful facility, but if you're ever in Atlanta, please come check us out.
We will.
Oh,
Love that.
I'm placing an order now, Kevin.
Thank you.
amazing.
All right, guys. Hey, have a wonderful night, and keep loving good meat. It is our phrase, eat good meat. And we want you guys to just continue to celebrate, what John does and these fantastic craft producers. It's what makes America what it is. And without you guys, we would be nowhere. So I applaud you and thank you all very much.
Well said. Cheers.
Have an amazing night, everybody. Thank you
Have a
for
great
coming.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Great
Bye, all.
Zoom meeting.
Sean.